morning, everybody, and welcome to our attendees and delegates who are entering our webinar this morning. This is the latest in the series of the Brent for Business webinars, where we look at how the COVID-19 crisis has impacted Brent's business community and the options available to you to help you get through it and grow for the future. If you just give us a few minutes, it does take a while for all of the delegates to get into the room. So I can see we're up to about 20 of you at the moment, and I know I've got some more people still trying to squeeze their way through the Zoom door to attend. So we've got a really good panel today. I've got international experts, I have learnt, with business experience from over the entire globe, ready to answer your questions, as well as an exceptional amount of precise local knowledge on the help and support that's available to you. Just while we're waiting for everybody to come into the room, my colleague is going to run a poll because we'd love to get some feedback from you on the easing of restrictions. So looking at the roadmap, it would be really good if you could let us know the areas that you are specifically looking for more support with. So if you can just go through that poll now, just as we keep going through as people enter in the room. While people are coming in, and I'm welcoming you all to join us today, I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. We have this panel of experts ready to answer questions, and so this is a very interactive live question session. I would be very grateful if you could all use the question and answer function in Zoom so that I can keep track of your questions and which one is going forward, and keep the chat function just for information and for comments only. So if you would like to ask a question for the panel, please use the Q&A function. You can also ask the question live. So if you've got that raise hand function, you can raise your hand and I will try to bring you in live to talk direct to the panelists. We will also be taking on board all of your questions, and if there's anything we can't answer today, we will get in touch with you afterwards or post the information out afterwards. Right, it looks as if we're just about ready to get underway. So can I close down our poll now? Hope everybody has answered. And I will introduce our panel to our delegates. So today we have Mark Allen, the Economic Development Officer of Brent Council. I've got Robert Ojah-Maharaj, Debt Recovery Officer of Brent Council, Joseph Andrews, the Local Business Manager of Metro Bank, Pratik Shah, the Head of Partnerships of BIZL, and Kirit, Pattni, the Director of KP and Company. I'm going to get them to give a little introduction to each of them as we go around. And while we're doing that, if you could start posting those questions, I'm pleased to see I've already got my first question coming in. So please take that as encouragement for everybody else to start posting. So starting with Mark. Mark, if you could just introduce yourself to our delegates and let us know what it is you're mostly looking to answer today.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Mark Allen. I'm an Economic Development Officer here at Brent Council. I've been at the council for 6 years now, working in the economic development team, kind of driving income generation within the borough, supporting businesses along our priority high streets and all our kind of commercial business areas. Aside from all of that, last year when the pandemic broke, we was kind of quickly set up as a task team to support businesses in the kind of recovery phase, to support all the delivery of the grants that the government brought forward. We set up a dedicated email website, which I'll share lots of links with you today, for areas of other support which you can find. But yeah, business@brent.gov.uk is where we kind of answer all businesses questions, support them, direct them to kind of whereabouts they can find the information they need. But yeah, I'm here today to answer any questions I can on the grants that still remain open, that the local authority are delivering on behalf of central government, and any other kind of signposting for support that I can offer, and look forward to answering any questions that I can.
There you go. My unmute button did not want to work. If I could turn down to Robert. Robert, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. I work at Brent Council. I have been here for 5 years. I'm the Debt Recovery Officer, and my specialty in my job is working with tenants who rent premises from the council to run their small businesses. So I have lots of experience in working with tenants who've had cash flow problems or problems paying their accounts. So this morning I can give lots of tips on how you can run your business in a way that makes favorable decision making when it comes to the council making decisions on your situation.
Thank you very much, Robert. Joseph, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, all attendees. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Thank you to Brent for Business as well for hosting. My name is Joseph Andrews. I'm a local business manager at Metro Bank. For those of you who aren't familiar with the role of local business manager, we're traditional relationship managers. What we do is give you one point of contact for your business so that you can focus on doing what you do best, managing your business, and then we can kind of take care of everything else on the finance side, whether that goes to loans, overdrafts, invoice finance, asset finance, any cash flow solutions. We're more of a conduit for the rest of the bank. So we look after a number of different services, and we also work quite closely with accountants, especially now off the back of COVID. I mean, over the last year, we've been helping customers with the bounce back loan and also the civils, the coronavirus business interruption loan. We've now seen that come to an end, so we're transitioning into a period where we're supporting businesses going forward, managing the finance that they have, getting back to business, and just being the support that they need. So really looking forward to the discussion today. I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions that you may have for me, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Kirit, can you tell us a bit about yourself and KP & Co?
Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning. So yes, Kirit Pattni of KP & Company. We are the firm of chartered certified accountants, running the firm for about 10 years now, providing full accountancy services for all SMEs, ranging from the likes of franchise stores. So we have a lot of franchise stores. We do all the accounting work for them, pharmacy sectors, self-employed, buy-to-let landlords. We do a lot of property taxation planning because the things have changed so much over the last 2 years. It's basically general practice to do all accountancy services under one roof, and especially during the COVID situation, we've been helping a lot of clients in terms of the furlough claims and also advising them on terms of types of loans they're eligible to apply, also grants of eligibilities as well. So we've been doing a lot of hand holding for a lot of our clients over the last 12 months, and I think that's when it's kind of going over and above doing just normal accounting work for them. And I think that kind of gets appreciated in the long term. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the accounting side, or even in terms of the furlough claims, what are your eligibilities are, self-employment grants as well. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Pratik, do you want to finish off by introducing yourself to us?
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Pratik Shah from BIZL Finance. In my previous life career, I was a banker at NatWest for 5 years. So I was helping SMEs in and around the local area of Northwest London, supporting them with all their banking needs. Then BIZL came along. We've been going 3.5 years now. And what we do is we're financial intermediaries helping business owners and property owners source funding from the whole of market. What that actually means is that we help business owners, property owners, package their lending requirements together and then provide them and source them out to a panel of about 100 lenders. That includes the high street banks, challenger banks, as well as peer-to-peer funders. And then they get the choice and the comparison of which lender is best for them. So in the last 12 months through the pandemic, what we've been heavily focused around is the coronavirus business impact loan. It's been quite a popular product amongst SMEs. And what we've been helping them with is where their high street bank or the bank that they are banking with is not able to help, we've been helping them source that funding from external lenders, and it was available. Now that deadline has passed, we're moving on to other financial products. So what I'm here to answer questions around is finance. So if there is a question around what's the best type of finance or things around cash flow funding, then I'm happy to help and answer any questions that anyone in the viewership might have.
Lovely, thank you very much. There's going to be quite a lot about funding today, I suspect. I actually spotted this morning that the government had extended the deadlines on what I'm going to describe as the confusingly named LRSG open, LRSG closed, and closed business lockdown payments. And I found difficult enough to navigate between them myself. But before we get to that, I've actually noticed I've got quite a few questions coming in about the kind of help that can take place now technologically. and the number of online systems available to you and new apps. And I've got a few questions coming in on that. I can safely say that I use as many apps as I can possibly get my hands on that I feel are useful for my business. And there are certainly 3 or 4 that I could not function without. I've got a specific question actually for Kirit, which is there a specific accounting package that you recommend? And yes, I heartily recommend accounting packages in general, because we run 2 or 3 different companies and I just would be lost without them, without that real-time support. Kirit, do you want to start? And then I suspect we've got a few other people with some recommendations as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess obviously there are so many packages out there, and I appreciate a lot of businesses, they kind of get lost in the system, which is the ideal package for me. I think the question you need to ask yourself is, what are you looking for in terms of your final result? You could be a small business. You might don't need all the reporting requirements what other bigger businesses need. So I think you got to look at it. What are your requirements are? If you're just looking for a basic accounting package, like it just does your VAT returns, if it prepares your ledger work, for example, obviously one of the popular ones currently on the market is the likes of Xero, for example. That's very easy to use. You don't need, they call it an accounting knowledge. It's very easy to learn. That's kind of, and it's all cloud-based, so there's no worry to save your data. It saves automatically on cloud. Other one I would say you can explore is obviously the Sage Line 1 or Line 50, or there's also Sage 1 accounting. Again, that's the online based, and there's likes of this QuickBooks. So it all depends what you need. If you just need a basic software just to do your VAT returns, for example, I would say don't spend hundreds of pounds getting these, sophisticated, expensive software, because you're just throwing your money away. If you're on a basic package, Xero is very easy to use. It's a subscription based. The minimum price starts from, say, the likes of £5 per month, and it'll do your job for you. And if you want to add on something extra, you can even add on if you want to do your in-house payroll through Xero. It's obviously all Ojah-Maharaj compliant, very easy to use. So yeah, I think it all depends what are your requirements are. I mean, a lot of our clients they give us the final result. So when we get the year-end reports, obviously the savings for them in the long term, because the result, the work's already been done for us. Whereas others will say, look, I can only do, I don't know how to go by XYZ. I can just post my invoices, give you VAT returns, and then you take over from there. So I think it all depends what you are looking for at the end of the day in terms of the reporting requirements. But I would say, these are the popular ones, the likes of Xero, Sage, QuickBooks. Those are the main ones.
I can say they're all very good. I have used Cashflow, switched to Xero. I actually use QuickBooks for a charity that I support as treasurer. They are all incredibly easy to use, and they're all very cost effective, and they certainly do save you money with your accountant, because you have fewer queries, because you're dealing with most of it as it comes in. Robert, would you like to come in on this one at all?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to everyone that it's very tempting to go with all the advertising on television. But just speaking from past experience, doing some bookkeeping in an earlier life in Vancouver, I had a situation where a small business owner was using an app, and she was basically posting the wrong types of transactions to the wrong part of the ledger. So what I want to mention to everyone is that before you start using an app, make sure that when you choose your bookkeeper or accountant, and Natasha is going to post a link shortly in the webinar, that you understand the fundamentals of accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, your financial statements, so you absolutely are 100% sure that when you use the app, you're actually posting the transactions in the right place. Because the downside is that if you post the transactions in the wrong place, and then you ask your accountant or bookkeeper to fix it, if he's charging you an hourly rate, it's going to be a very big bill. So work up front, have a chat with the accountant, get the advice from the accountant or bookkeeper on what the features and benefits of the apps are, and they get them to explain to you exactly how to use the app before you start using it. That's just a tip.
That is good advice. Ours was set up by our accountant, and every now and then I get something I don't know where to post, and I just give him a call, and we get it all in the right place. And that way you've also got someone to talk to if you get a query about something. So that is very good. I'm going to move on now because actually somebody has asked sort of a slightly related question, which is extending our use of technology into using something like card readers for payments. So I have a question that says, are small company card readers, and they've used SumUp for a startup convenience store, good? They don't have monthly fees, but take 1.69% per transaction. I'm going to give you my personal experience here is that we used to have a print business, and I found a lot of my print clients did not necessarily pay their invoices. So I was prepared to take the monthly fee of the transaction to have them pay up front. And those were in the days when you still had to use Barclaycard machines, where it's obviously a lot easier these days. Would anyone like to come in on those kind of bits of technology and any advice there is? Because they can start to add up if you start to have a fee for the merchant bank account and a fee for the card reader and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Joe, I can come in on this with a slightly different angle. I think you touched on it. There's, like with accounting packages, there's a lot of providers out there for merchant services, especially for startups. I think one of the benefits of having a merchant terminal there is that, well, right now there's a big demand for people not paying in cash, right? Everyone wants to use their touch the card, contactless, and make their payment and go. And that's one of the things that can help by using a card terminal is that the cash goes directly into your bank account. That seems obvious, but actually if you required funding or anything like that, it's very it's easier to get funding, because actually we can request things like your bank statements. We can actually request your merchant terminal statements. And if you ever require funding off the back of it, especially for startups where funding is quite tricky to get, it's good to have a card machine because you can leverage that to source funding. So we have things like merchant cash advances where they will provide you with cash flow up front and then take a small percentage of your card payments. It's a slightly different angle on this, but I would say it's very good to have that card terminal there, because as a startup, it can be tricky to source funding. It can be tricky to verify your income because your accounts might not be done within the 12 months. So actually in 6 months' time, you have a verifiable source of information about how much turnover you've done or the sales that you've made more than anything.
Yeah, thank you very much. Joseph, I was actually going to turn to you anyway because I have a special question for you. But before I do that, do you want to come in on this one?
Yes, absolutely. So I was just going to go answer more specifically to obtaining the card reader and the right one for you. So we work with brokers. Obviously, everyone is open to kind of do your own research on the type of card terminal that will work for you. But if you did want to kind of have a conversation with someone to speak to them about what you need and what's important for you, similar to when we were having the conversation around accounting software, it's more about what's best for you. So it's best to kind of have a conversation with someone about what things, what's important to you, whether it's the price point, whether it is the fee that's going to be taken, or the type of terminals that you're going to require as well. Are you going to be on the go? Or are you going to be actually is it going to be a terminal that's in a store? All those things are kind of, we take into consideration. So we work with Accept Cards. So if anyone did need a kind of steer as far as the type of terminals to go for, then I'm more than happy to have that conversation. You can pick up with me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We do actually have one very specific question for you. Actually, it's interesting because it came up in the last one of these I shared as well, which is, when will Metro start opening accounts for businesses and community groups?
Well, I have great news. We are open for accounts for business and community groups. We've actually started opening accounts online as well. So you can actually go to our website to open accounts. For those that would like a direct manager, a relationship manager, and someone to sit down with them to really understand their business as well, I'm the person you'll go to for that as well. So feel free to reach out to me.
That's great. I think we're going to move on to funding now because we're starting to get some of those funding questions in. There are an awful lot of different funds out there. And I know, because I've had to apply for them, that it's really, really confusing. Mark, I'm going to look to you first, because where is a good place for people to start to find out what is actually available to them and whether or not they're eligible? Just in a kind of simplistic way. I think you might have some links that you're going to send around as well, which will at least give the local authority and the council side of it before we go further.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. So the two main places that I would recommend anyone to start would be the council's website. And as Joe says, I'll share the link with that in the chat. And I think that it will be sent around afterwards as well. So the council has dedicated business support web pages. And also I'd recommend looking on the government gov.uk's own business support pages as well for a kind of other support that the local authority isn't administering. Both of those links I will share. But yeah, that would be the first. I mean, at the moment, the council only has 2 grants actually live, which is the local restriction support grant from February the 16th through to April the 1st or 31st of March. So the period of the last lockdown. And then obviously the new restart grant, which is for businesses eligible from April the 1st. They're the only 2 that we have live at the moment. And obviously one of the kind of bone of contention has been that you need a business rates account to be able to be eligible for them, which is one of the government kind of restrictions on that. The additional restrictions grant, which is very similar to the discretionary grant that the council run last summer, is currently closed at the moment, just purely through sheer weight of volume of applications we received. So the council can clear the backlog to make sure that we don't run out of money. Once that's been done and we realise, hopefully we'll find out that there's some money remaining, then this will be reopened, and we will look at the criteria as well, because we know there's a lot of businesses that are currently falling through the gaps of government support still.
I actually have a specific question before I post that around, which is someone has said, Is a convenience store that sells phone accessories and a photocopy service and American candy, which apparently are their top 3 sellers, good knowledge of the business there, does that count as non-essential retail? Because I know it is difficult to navigate some of this.
Yeah, it's very difficult because we found over the last year, a lot of businesses are so niche, and it's kind of individual to the business themselves. Under the criteria there, as long as they don't repair mobile phones, if there was a mobile phone repair shop, they would be classed as essential and would be allowed to remain open. If they don't repair the mobile phones, they're just a seller. To me, that sounds like non-essential, and they would have been forced to close. And obviously that would be one of the things, were the business forced to close? Did they close during the lockdowns? If they did, then they're classed as non-essential.
Okay, and then I'm going to say, is Brent going to offer there's a lot of questions, I think, about the ARG and restart grants to businesses without business premises. So I know you touched on this, the requirement to be paying business rates and or have a lease is quite important. So how does that work? Can Brent offer the grants to other businesses?
So to separate those 2 out, so the restart grant itself, it is only the business rates account holder who can apply. Now, if that's the landlord, for example, because we know a lot of businesses don't hold the business rates account, but they pay business rates with their rent to their landlord. We suggest as a council having that conversation with your landlord and just explaining to him that money should be for the business. It is to support the business and should be in the hands of the business. If you have a good relationship with them, have that conversation by all means, but it isn't something that the local authority can kind of step in and get involved with. Secondary to that, the ARG, there's currently internal discussions going on, and there's a paper going to CMT within the next 2 weeks, which will be looking at ways of reopening the ARG should any funding be available. And this will be kind of expanding the scope, because as you say, we know that there are a lot of businesses out there who are supply side businesses, for example, who don't have a business rates account and who fall through the gaps of the government support, as well as kind of other businesses, home workers, self-employed, people like this that we supported last year under the discretionary grant scheme. But we haven't supported this time under this discretionary element. But there is a chance, like I say, that internal decision will be made by senior managers within the next couple of weeks as to whether that will happen. So I would say watch the council's website. Please sign up to our newsletter, our weekly newsletter that goes out, which will have all this information on it. Again, I'll send a link out. I've given it to Natasha. I'll pop it in the chat. That would be the easiest way to keep on top of all the developments that happen internally. And when this information is finally confirmed, we will share that with everybody.
And Mark, I've got one quick question before I just move on to everyone else to talk about other options for funding, which is, can you apply to the ARG again? If I already have received my first grant payment but need more, can I make a second application?
That is a good question. Well, it's currently closed at the moment, so the answer is no. When it reopens, it's probably going to reopen in a slightly different guise. One of the questions will obviously be, are we going to support businesses that have already been supported? I don't know the answer, is the honest take on that at the moment. Yeah, I don't see why not. But again, that will be a decision that's made internally, and then we will advertise that once we know.
Thank you very much. I think the answer is there. You have to keep an eye out on the stuff that's coming out and going all the time. And there are some couple of key deadlines as well that you need to keep an eye on. And I'm sure that there'll be some information coming out about that, of stuff as it comes and as it closes. Can I throw it open now to the rest of the panel, because not everybody is available, unfortunately, for all the grants. What other forms of funding and or support is available if you cannot get some of those quite restrictive, actually, government grants that originally came out? That I personally did benefit for them, but you have to fit particular eligibility criteria. Pratik, can I start with you? Is there any advice that you can give here?
I will talk from a funding perspective on this question. So there was, we're talking a little bit past tense. There was obviously the coronavirus business impact loan. There was the bounce back loan that was available from your high street bank, the bank that you bank with. Now moving forward, as of April, there is now the recovery loan scheme, which is similar to the old enterprise finance guarantee scheme, where what the banks are saying is that we will provide eligible businesses, if they meet our normal lending criteria, we would provide them with funding. But where a sticking point might be things like personal guarantees or charges over properties, the government will put up 80% of the security. I think a big key point to put there is that any business that wishes to take this type of funding would be 100% liable for the debt that is outstanding. The guarantee is for the bank, not necessarily the business owner. So what the government is saying, that we will, in the event of default, and if the bank weren't able to recover their funds through the normal channels, the government would put up the 80% security. But it's important to note that people are, at the first point of call for repaying that funding. But I would say it is funding. It's not like the coronavirus business impact loan where you get 12 months interest-free payments and your fees. It's normal in the sense that you start paying interest from day one, you do pay a fee. But what it does do is it allows businesses to source funding, and it encourages banks to lend where they might not have been entirely comfortable doing it without security. And for somebody to provide a charge over an investment property or their marital home, for that case, is quite difficult when we are in difficult economic times. So it is a good scheme. Banks are still starting to find their feet about how they're going to deploy it. More lenders will be accredited as we go along. But if anyone's looking for specific information, I'm more than happy to talk about that, or they can reach out to me.
Thank you very much. Kirit or Joseph, do you want to come in on this one about additional funding support that may be available via banks or through other means? And I guess it's not just in this particular case for looking at people in short-term difficulty for coronavirus, but I would also like to say that there might actually be companies out there that are looking to grow and are looking for funding to grow. And so if people have got advice for that, I think that would also be helpful at this time, because I would like to look at something positive for those companies that have managed to survive and start to look forward. Kirit, shall I start with you?
Sure. I think obviously I'm going to just throw some lights from a different angle here. Obviously, Pratik mentioned the recovery loan scheme, which is in place. Obviously, the CBILS and the bounce back loan have kind of come to an end now. So what do we do if you're looking for more funding, or how do you kind of manage your cash flow, if you like? There are a lot of help available from the likes of, if you look at HMRC, for example, you can have various time to pay arrangement schemes in place. Obviously, that idea, I mean, this is what we've been advising a lot of our clients is to, if you're sitting on a cash which can be utilized in a better or efficient way, speak to HMRC, for example. If you are owing corporation tax, VAT liability which you have outstanding, get the time to pay arrangement with them, and they're more than happy to do that. Obviously, the scheme has been in place for over a year now. That's one thing I would say, is kind of negotiate your liabilities in a better way. The idea is you want to retain cash in your bank rather than giving it out if you can. Other thing is obviously kind of have an arrangement with your suppliers. So again, it all comes back to time to pay arrangements. Renegotiate the terms with them, because at the moment, I think all of us are in kind of similar situation, because nobody wants to lose a potential client, going forward. So I would rather kind of offer them a little bit of an incentive to retain that client, and obviously get the time to pay arrangement for them. So my advice is, it's kind of maintain or have an effective cash flow management for your business.
Okay, thank you very much. Joseph, is there anything you'd like to say on this? Because actually I've got other questions coming in about saying it's all very well saying there are grants and loans, but what else is out there for us?
Absolutely. So I think I'll raise the point that there's copious amounts of information available on the gov.uk website. So I always say this is one of the best places to look first, because it not only covers the loan side of things, but it also covers what grants are available to businesses. And then on the other front, I suppose, absolutely agree with Kirit there. It's about understanding your cash flow. And for a lot of people where they may have already taken the coronavirus business interruption loan or the bounce back loan, they need to really understand their cash position for them to be able to look at, from a longevity measure of how their business is going to be able to make it through and continue to trade and be able to keep up with the commitments that they've put themselves into now. So it's really important to pick up the phone, speak to your accountant, sit down with them, understand your finances. If not, have a word with your relationship manager as well. Speak to them about what's available to them. If you have taken the bounce back loan, there's a pay-as-you-grow scheme that's come out now, where it's to kind of help relieve some of the financial strain that you might have now after taking the lending that you have. So there's many things available. It's really important for you to tap in with your accountants, business managers, anyone in finance. Really speak to them and really gauge a real understanding of what things are looking like now as for your business, because it's so important, very vital at this point.
Thank you very much. I have a quick specific question, which I'm going to put to Mark, which is, how long does it take to receive ARG payments? Someone who says they applied end of Feb and haven't received the payments. And I wondered if you could maybe comment on that one and see if you can help.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. So again, it's individual to each business, because it depends on the complexity of the application and the claim, and if all the documents were received by the assessment team. If you've not heard anything from the assessment team since February, then I would suggest please get in touch. Drop us an email at our dedicated email support address, which I think Natasha is kindly putting in the links. But it's business at brent.gov.uk with your ARG application number, and one of the team will pick that up today and get back to you. We have the ability to be able to access the system and see at what stage applications are at. But I know some are taking much longer than others, just due to the complexity of checking bank account details, and kind of there's so much that the council needs to go through on behalf of the government from a kind of fraud and audit purpose, that they are taking longer than they perhaps should be.
Thanks very much. In a minute, I'm going to ask about what should a business do if it starts to find itself getting in debt or can't keep on top of those loan repayments, and what options are there out to help them. But in the first time, I've got Christine Koch, who's come online and is waving a hand. Christine, are you able to come online and ask your question direct? Hopefully, if you say something, we'll be able to hear you. You may need to unmute yourself. Christine, are you there? No, I think she's gone. Christine, if you unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you. No. Okay. Maybe we'll come back to you later. In the meantime, I was going to ask, clearly at this particular time, we've talked a little bit about cash flow and how important it is to keep on top of it, and how there are perhaps some tools out there that can help you, and or your accountant, if you've got a good accountant, can help advise you. But once someone starts to get into trouble, and I know there's been a lot on this about personal finance as well on the radio and the television recently, what advice can you give to help people if they start to get into trouble so that it doesn't start getting bigger? Robert, I think you're the obvious person for me to start this question with. So if you've got businesses out there that are starting to struggle with rents and rates and everything else, what's the top tip that you would give them?
Okay, I'm going to combine my answer to some points presented by the different panelists as well. it's very important when you're running your business that you look at the cash position of the business, particularly in terms of cash flows, and you do a budget. So one of the most fundamental things is to have a budget for your business with a cash flow forecast of what you project it to be, and then have a comparison of what it actually is. So the difference between cash received versus cash expected is called the variance. And you need to work very closely with your accountant, and a very good accountant would have a very good close communication relationship with their client to let them know if there is a red flag situation. So to answer your question specifically, the top tips would be make sure that you have a separate personal budget and a business budget, and you keep them completely separate, okay? Because the urgency of your circumstances is obviously dictated. It impacts the urgency of your situation. So that's the first thing. And then with regards to business debts, prioritizing your priority debts like business rates, etc., utility bills, gas, electricity, water, etc., etc. That's really, really important to get those prioritized. The business rates normally would expect you to repay any debts within the same financial year. So say, for example, you run into a problem, say, into 3 or 4 months of trading, and you basically are 2 or 3 months behind. Contact them as quickly as possible to let them know that you have a situation. And then the debt recovery officer will then have a conversation with you to discuss ways of accommodating you by looking at your cash flow situation and trying to be sympathetic to your case with their decision making. But one key point I want to make here, which is very important, is that the decision making of a lender or a creditor is directly related to the behavior of the customer over the period of time that they've been trading. For example, if, for example, I have someone who is a tenant of the council, and for the past 3 or 4 years, they've always paid their rent on time religiously for 3 years. And then in the 4th year, they have a problem with their arrears in the 4th year, and they're looking for some help. That tenant would get more of a favorable decision from me because I know from their trading behavior that they've always paid their bill on time. If you're the reverse and you've never paid your bills on time, then you run into financial difficulty, and then you come to me for help, I'm going to be less sympathetic to your situation because you have not shown me that you're responsible in taking your bills seriously and paying them on time. So this is a big tip which I'd like to give to people. And this goes back to the budget, making sure that your budget is strictly adhered to. You pay your bills on time. Your accountant can tell you, what's my accounts payable liabilities? What's my expected income for my accounts receivable? Which one should I prioritize in terms of my VAT liabilities, etc.? So it's really important to have a good conversation with your accountant, because the accountant can give you good advice to approach your creditor to say, this is my situation. So in argument, the accountant is best placed to present the financial data to the creditor in a way that can weigh in your favor. But like I said, the payment behavior over time is the key factor in decision making.
Yeah, so, strong track record, strong fiscal control will stand you in good stead should you get a temporary problem with your finances or your cash flow. I've got a couple of sad ones here, which I'm going to throw out to the team to see if anyone would like to help. So I've got someone who says, if you've taken out a bounce back loan and you can't afford to pay it as your business isn't back to normal trading yet, and you have no hope of being able to pay it back, what do you do? I'm going to say, Kirit, would you like to start us off on this one?
Yeah, I think as I think Joseph mentioned earlier, obviously, if you can't afford to repay your bounce back loan now, obviously you can kind of go back to your bank. Even Pratik mentioned that you go back, speak to your lender and get the terms re-agreed with your bank. Because the last thing you don't want any defaults on your to flag up on your history. So I would say, talk to the bank where you have kind of borrowed the money and then get the payment terms rearranged, or either re-extend the payment terms, or try and pay whatever you can. Yeah. So the key advice would be talk to the lender.
I think the same probably applies for a couple of other questions we've got. Joseph and or Pratik, I don't know if you want to come in, because obviously I've got someone asking about if you owe tax to HMRC and you cannot afford to pay it, and they will only discuss time to pay if you can start payments. What do you do? Pratik, what could you help someone who's really struggling? I think I've also got questions around what happens if you're struggling with VAT as well, which is usually a cash flow issue.
Yeah, so on this, I don't want to echo kind of what Kirit's going to say and probably steal a little bit of Joseph's thunder, but on that note, I think communication is a big thing. So, and this goes back to the previous question as well around debt management. It seems obvious, but the best thing to do is hit it head on. So if you're going to struggle to pay back your bank or any lender or a supplier for that case, the best thing to do is to pick up the phone to them really and advise them of the current circumstances. And typically, in my experience with banks especially, they are more than happy to help where they can in creating a payment structure that can help, because their number one priority is to get the funding that they've put out back into the banks. And what they might be able to do, especially with the bounce back and the civils, is extend the term. But for any debt that you might have, is just having the conversation about, look, this is the difficulties I'm having. How can you help? And people will have, any lender or supplier that's giving you some form of credit will have a policy in place or some idea of how they might be able to help you. So that's really important. On the VAT question specifically, I think my answer is based around people who might be struggling with VAT because of cash flow, but the business is running well. In those circumstances, there are lenders out there that can help you pay a VAT bill in advance and then on short-term funding. So then as and when you kind of get back to normal trading, you can then repay that back. But I think a key bit in that is making sure that your business is still viable, because the last thing you want to do is take on debt where if the business might not be as viable as you once thought, the last thing you want to do is take out more debt to pay other debts, because it's just a spiral then. So if it's real financial difficulties and you don't think you recover from it, then it's communicating to the people who've given you credit to advise them that I'm having these difficulties. How can you help me? And I think people appreciate that a bit more. And then if you think it's just a bit of a timing and a cash flow issue, then there are various types of short-term funding out there that you can use to pay off your bills and then stretch those payments over months just to ease up the cash flow.
I think that's a good point. Joseph, I'm going to ask you to come in here, and then I'm going to see if I can throw out a question to the team about how do you assess whether your business is still viable, because clearly I think Pratik's point is right. There are plenty of support schemes out there and loans and funding, but given the risk to your own personal budget as well as your business one, how is the best way to assess whether or not time is up? Joseph, is there anything you can also talk about how to help people who are suffering what I'm calling more short-term difficulty in the sense of trying to get through until normal trading returns?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to shamelessly echo what Pratik said there, because he's hit the nail on the head. It is all about the communication. That's the most important thing. So the earliest that you can, when you realize that you may have difficulty in the repayments, come and speak to your bank or speak to the creditor. Have a word with us. We'll try to understand what your position is. And then beside from, say, if you do have the bounce back loan, beside from the pay as you grow scheme and things like that, really understanding what your financial position is, the viability of the business, how soon you'll be able to get back to a place where you'll be able to commit to those repayments is an important thing for us to be able to understand. So that way we can kind of make more of a bespoke arrangement for the business. Because the main thing for us is we look at longevity of the business. So we want your business to survive for as long as it possibly can. And so for us, it's a thing where we want to be able to help in that. And we'd want you to be in a position where you just communicate with us straight away. Just have a chat, pick up the phone to your bank, and we can see how we can help explore options.
Thank you very much. I suppose the next one is really very much a business support question, which is who do you talk to if you really need advice about, should I be taking out that loan, or should I be taking out more money, or should I be investing more of my own money in it, or is my business actually viable in the long term? Can somebody, Robert, you've got your hand up here.
I just wanted to mention, just picking up on Joseph's point, talking from personal experience in my role here at the council. What I can tell you is that when I look at people who have been problem payers over time, and those debts have actually become worse or exacerbated by, say, for example, COVID-19, I basically have a discussion with certain managers, and I say, well, looking at this business from what its current position is now and its position being worse, it's, in our opinion, not really a viable business anymore. So what I'm trying to say is that it's really important as a business that you take a really serious re-evaluation of your trading position. If your debt position is worsening and you don't see the trading conditions improve, because, for example, if you signed a loan with personal security with your house and your debts increased, but your business worsened, then it only makes your personal situation worse than it was. So it's really important to have a very close communication relationship with your bankers, your creditors, and your accountants. And the accountant, in this case, is really, really important to give the owner of the business a realistic evaluation as to whether or not the business can continue to be viable so they don't become in a worse position.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of so I've got loads of questions and I'm worried we're going to run out of time. I think we may not be able to answer them all. Got a couple of really quick specific ones, which I think probably are going to be best for Mark, which is, are new businesses allowed to apply for bounce back loan schemes? So is a new business allowed to apply? Actually, it's probably...
I'm not 100% sure on that one, if I'm honest. I think maybe one of the other panel would probably be...
Probably one of the others. It's a bank. It's more of a banking question, isn't it? So can you apply for a bounce back scheme if you haven't really got much of a trading history? Joseph, or... Yeah.
So with the bounce back loan scheme, it's actually ended. So you would not be able to apply now. I guess the next would be a recovery loan scheme that you may be able to have a look at, but again, would really need to understand how long the business has been trading and when you actually began trading, because that is an important point. For us to determine before we were to look at lending any of those funds. So if bounce back loan, it's no longer available to people to apply.
And I think it is critical for almost anything you apply for that trading history counts. I'm sorry, Mark, this was a question I meant to ask you, which is, I went on the Brent Council website to find out about the Restart Grant, and it says business rate payers can apply. My business is registered for business rates. However, we are eligible for small business rates relief. So we actually have 0 business rates. Am I still eligible?
Yes, absolutely. So ratepayer, it means basically, do you hold the business rates account in your name? So if the business rates account is in your name, regardless of whether you receive business rates relief, you will still be eligible to apply. So the answer is yes.
And I've got an additional one, which is, as a food and beverage business with outdoor seating, am I eligible for the local restriction grant? We can still do these businesses, although they can still do takeaway, are still drastically impacted by lack of footfall.
That would be unique to the style of business it was. If it is a takeaway business only, so for example, like a chicken shop or something like that, that wasn't forced to close, then the answer for LR for the local restrictions grant would be no. Unfortunately, that was government criteria that takeaways were not eligible for LRSG, but the additional restrictions grant did support them. So I would say keep an eye on the website. So if that does reopen, then there's possibility that they could apply to the additional restrictions grant or whatever it reopens as. But no would be the answer to the local restriction support grant.
Thank you very much, Robert. Unmute.
Just a quick tip for any small businesses like the chicken shop who may be having some challenging times with cash flows. If you're in a situation like that, but your business is staying above board and it's surviving, what you can try to do is renegotiate, as Kirit highlighted, payment terms with your creditors. Like, for example, if the people who supply you chicken normally say pay our invoices in 30 days or 45 days, can you ask them if they can pay over 60 days? So that way you have a little bit of a breathing space with your cash flows, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little bit of a tip.
Thank you very much. We're going to touch a little bit on furlough here, because furlough has been remarkably useful for companies trying to keep much valued staff on their books, but it is due to end. And I've got somebody here asking that they know it's due to end. What options do I have as a small business owner if I'm still struggling to bring all staff back by the time it ends? I don't want to think about letting them go. Will there be further help? Well, I suspect the answer is we don't really know if there'll be further help, but is there any other advice that someone can give at this time? Pratik, I saw you nod, so I'm hoping that you can see if you can give this person a little bit of advice about what they can do to try to keep those staff on board.
It's really a tricky question, Joe, because it's true the furlough scheme does end. I guess it's hard to say. If a business is in difficulty, from my perspective of where we help businesses to kind of grow and find themselves out of difficulty is about, again, bringing it back to the viability of a business. Because one of the reasons at least why furlough is ending September, I think Kirit mentioned to me about, it's ending September, is because we should hopefully get somewhere towards normal trading by then. June is when we're supposedly coming out of lockdown. Fingers crossed, hopefully it might be a little bit earlier, but we're not sure. But the idea is that from June to September, you have that time to kind of rethink where the business is going. So I would say use the furlough to the maximum point, which is that end of September date. But then if you can open up by June, it's very much about looking at where is the business gonna get to by September, and what does future trading look like. The start and the unfortunate and the reality is that there is it might just come into question that actually if trading is now at 80% of what it was in 2019, 2018, then that question will come up around actually, letting staff go or finding different roles for them, maybe depending on the size of your business. But I would say just use it to the maximum. So it's not an exact tip about what you do after furlough, because, if your business is viable, but you just want a little bit more time, yes, funding is available for you to kind of ease up some of that cash flow worry. But it's very much asking yourself, is the business viable? From June to September, viability is a big question, and not just viability, but where is your business going to get to? Are you going to go back to 100% of where you were in terms of trading? Are you at 80%, which then requires 80% of staffing? So I would say use it for the maximum time available to understand the viability of business. And if your business is viable, but you don't want to let staff go, then consider funding, short-term funding, just to allow you to spread some of those payments over a longer period of time.
Thank you very much. Kirit? You'd unmute, please.
Just to add on, obviously, as we all know, the furlough is ending in September. So obviously, until June, fine, you go 80%, then obviously going down to 70% July, then 60% August, September, and that's when it ends. Now, what do we do after? A couple of things we kind of flagging to our clients is try and restructure your headcounts in terms of, rather than laying off employees, try and restructure or make arrangements in terms of reducing one day for one staff and retain your existing staff. You kind of job sharing, if you like. So you're supporting your key workers to sail through the tough times, because as I mentioned earlier, the real test will come post September, and hopefully things will pick up by then. So we won't see that many redundancies coming through along. But I would say one thing to think about is try and think of maybe restructuring your staff within your organization in terms of somebody, if you can do 3 days, for example, or let other person do 2 days, kind of job share. And then that way, I think that also helps in terms of morale boosting for your employees as well, because obviously, they've been loyal to you, give the loyalties back to them.
I think that's actually very good advice. My company actually came out of the last recession, and I do remember that there was a big difference as we came out of the recession and went back into growth from companies that had let staff off, who found it very difficult to recruit again, and from companies that had restructured and had offered their employees perhaps reduced wages for working fewer days, job sharing options. There are many people out there that actually quite like reduced hours. I mean, we are a very family friendly business, so we actually have an awful lot of employees on flexible working times. Strangely enough, they work more in the school time, less during school holidays, and I have to work out how to balance that out. But it's actually quite a good staff retention technique, and it's quite a good way of being supportive of your staff to be able to do job shares, and or offer them the opportunity to share perhaps the burden between all of them, because most staff are really good team players and they will help each other out, and that's a good way of forming a strong team for the future. I've got one small question just to ask, which is coming in, and it's like, actually, it's quite a nice story. It's how is Brent Council proposing to support the local high streets? What can be done to help get footfall back? Because I do get that footfall is critical for a large number of businesses out there. Mark, I think that's probably best for you. I appreciate it's not necessarily your area of expertise, but you might at least be able to point us in the direction of where to get more information.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Yeah, really nice question. So the government have recently announced an additional top up to the Welcome Back Fund, as businesses may have heard about, which is kind of a follow on from the Recovering High Street Safely Fund, which is ERDF funding. So the council received just under £300,000 there, which we're currently drawing up plans for. We previously supported our 9 priority town centres with kind of interventions last time, which was more to do with from a COVID safe perspective. So kind of widening the pavements at pinch points around kind of where people would queue for banks and cash machines and at bus stops, that kind of stuff. We're currently drawing up plans for further kind of business support elements with this funding. It's going to be to drive footfall into town centres. So there's going to be events, markets, things like this are now under the scope of the new Welcome Back Fund. So our 9 priority town centres have town centre managers. Please, by all means, get in touch with us at business@brent.gov.uk, where we can kind of put you in touch with them. I'm sure they'd be happy to have discussions with businesses around what's going on in their local areas, to be more specific. But from a wider perspective, yeah, the Welcome Back Fund is definitely going to be targeted towards our town centres and high streets within the coming year.
Thank you very much. We've still got questions coming in, and I do appreciate we aren't going to have time to answer all of them. I do have one question here, which I'm not going to answer, but I am going to use as a shameless plug for next week's networking session. So I have a question from someone saying he's being asked by a small domiciliary provider to use his skills on a consultancy basis, which was not in his original business plan. How does one know how to charge for consultancy work? Well, I don't think that's a question for this particular panel, but we are doing a networking event next Wednesday morning quite early, and I suspect that if you were to put that out to the group there, you might get a lot of very good advice from other people who've had to face the same challenge within the SME market. So just as we close down, I just would like to quickly ask, what is the top tip for, just one top tip from each of you, please, for each business who's listening today? And I'm going to start with Robert. Can you just give me one top tip, one sentence only, because I've only got 2 minutes.
Be very close to your business, work very closely with your accountant to monitor the health of the business.
Okay. Kirit.
Yeah, I think I would say communication is a key factor for me here. Talk to your advisors, your banks, your suppliers, customers. Yeah, that's a key thing to go forward.
Joseph, what's your top tip for everyone listening in today?
I would say that, communication is absolutely key. If you have a relationship manager, introduce them to your accountant. When they work together, it just makes things a whole lot easier, understanding your cash position and how we can help as well.
Thank you. Pratik.
Kirit kind of stole my thunder, so I'll reword it slightly. Discussion, and what I mean by discussion is discuss finance with creditors, suppliers if you're struggling, discuss finance with your advisors if you're looking to grow or you have questions. There are a lot of people out there, myself included, if you want to have a discussion about finance, more than happy to do so. But having that discussion early, and for want of a better phrase, not burying your head inside is important. So discuss finance with the people that are around you and use that support network.
Right, and Mark.
get in touch. We're here to help. So business@brent.gov.uk. I know I keep saying it, but that's where you can find us, and we're here to help. We're on your side. I know one of the queries we have coming into the inbox all the time at the moment is regarding the Restart grant. And just a quick update on that. The team are behind on that. They're saying that it may take up to 3 weeks to get the businesses their money. That's due to the government putting in new restrictions this time around audit and finance checks. So that it had to be an application form. We had to do this check. But the money is coming. It's a slow process, but we are getting it to you as quickly as we can. But please do get in touch if you need help.
Well, thank you very much. We're right on time. I think what I've learned from today is, yes, that fiscal discipline is and always has been important. And I guess for anyone else like me that remembers starting up, the critical thing when you started was to get that P&L sorted, to get your cash flow plan sorted, and to get your business plan sorted for growth. And I know that sounds strange to be thinking of that now, but I think the businesses that will win in the future will be the ones that already have a growth plan for how they're going to come out of this stronger than before. So on that note, and the final note of everybody just keep talking, we shall look forward to seeing you all next week. So thanks once again to your panelists, and keep talking, everybody. Cheerio. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.